Hi, Gene Monterastelli here, the editor of tappingqanda.com. The video that you are about to watch is a conversation that was a part of this year's 24 Hours of Tapping. The 24 Hours of Tapping is a fundraiser for the amazing work that is done by the Peaceful Heart Network. The Peaceful Heart Network has brought tapping to migrants, refugees, prisoners, and the underprivileged in over 30 countries all over the world. As you watch this video, if you learned something, if you were touched by it, if you were inspired by it, the easiest way to say thank you is to support the work of the Peaceful Heart Network. To do that, all you need to do is go to 24hoursoftapping.com/support. And as you look in the description and the first comment down below, you will see a direct link to that. I hope you enjoy this conversation. It's Dr. Craig Weiner. Craig is currently serves as the chair of the Board of Trustees for EFT International, as the co-director of the EFT Tapping Training Institute. He is an EFTi Master Trainer of Trainers, a certified instructor trainer of Matrix Reimprinting, a Meta Health Foundations trainer for comprehensive guide to, boy, this is great when you have dyslexic doing this. He is a Meta Health Foundation trainer for Meta Health International. And there we go, is the co-author of the book, Tapping into Success, a comprehensive guide to building a thriving EFT practice. He is also co-facilitates the EFT Marketing and Business Academy and the EFT Money Coach Certification program. Please welcome to 24 Hours of Tapping, my friend Craig. Hi, Craig. How you doing? Okay, hold on just a second. I am having a little bit of a sound issue here hearing you. Mm, I'm only seeing your mouth's moving. I'm not hearing you. Oh, there we go. Something just changed. Talk to you now. Okay, it came and it went. Okay, do a favor for me. Down below, when you look down below in the green room there, you see the settings. Click on settings and go into audio.
Let's try that.
There we go. We got it.
There we go. Okay.
Excellent.
Thanks. If you get any static, let me know. I'll switch over to the headphones.
Great. Perfect.
Okay. Awesome.
So before we jump in, there's something that I need to do on behalf of myself and behalf of the team. Informally, we have been referring you to the 2024 24 Hours of Tapping program director, because so many of the new people who are presenting and sharing with us over the course of this came from recommendations from you. And so just on behalf of myself and the team, we want to just appreciate the fact that you've been speaking up for a number of the folks that you've worked with along the way. And we've been so excited to have an opportunity to work with them, that we can introduce so many of those fun people over the course of the next 20 or so.
I love that. And I love supporting practitioners I get to know on this side what a big stretch it is for them to have their first interview with the Gene, right? In other words, that's a big deal. And it's really stepping out as we're talking about the transformation of a business, for them to be able to be on this kind of forum and be able to speak with you. They see Gene as like the interviewer. You're like the Larry King. You're the guy. So I love allowing that opportunity. Thank you for taking them on. Yeah.
You bet. Absolutely. And so as we have this conversation about stepping into growing business and sharing transformational, my friend Pamela Bruner likes to say, small business ownership is the graduate school of personal development.
So true. So right.
Yeah. And so as you say that and you respond to that, so true, like what is your experience from, because I know that, you have been doing transformational work basically your entire adult life as a self-employed person in different ways. And you're now helping other practitioners to do the exact same thing. What does, like, when you hear that and you go, that sounds right, why does that sound right to you?
Yeah. What a life gym is being your own boss. And, whether you're an EFT practitioner, whatever solopreneur you want, because that's really what we're talking about today is, I get to watch, for example, the first step when people are going through like learning their EFT, learning their tapping practices, and the skill and the growth and the healing that comes from the inspired first moment to tapping to actually being able to help others. And there's so much growth and development that comes with that. And it's true. But what I see times 10 is then what happens when they have to put themselves out there and then represent themselves as their own business. Yeah. Talk about the challenges that come up with that are, on one hand, oh my God, and on the other hand, what opportunities for healing and expanding and growth. right?
Yeah. And as I think about that, like I guess for me, like as I've had a chance to have conversation with folks as well, is when I'm in a circumstance that I believe so passionately about the work that I'm sharing,
Mhm.
and I'm sharing my heart in this work,
Right.
when I put myself out there and someone says no, what it feels like is they have rejected my heart.
Yeah.
It's not about the work or the fit or something like that, but it feels like it's me. And it's not even that they're saying no to they're saying no to me. And that just is so hard. And so, like, kind of the first layer of what are some of the stories or the reasons or the pieces
Mhm.
that make it hard for us to say, hey, I might have something that is useful for you.
Well, I think what I want to say is like with every opportunity that we have with these four, so many different things that happen with it's even before the no, right?
Hmm.
Even before we get to the no is the being able to set boundaries, right? In other words, what do I say yes to? What do I say no to? What do I open
Mm,
myself up to? What opportunities do
yeah.
I have? I mean, whether it's an interview with you or whether it's putting on a workshop or writing a blog and posting it, the ability to say yes and no. And I want to kind of step back. It's about the business, but it's not about the business because it's about my ability to set a boundary for myself, which has nothing to do with the business, but it has everything to do with the business, but its roots are from before the business. Everything is a tappable issue. So we have everything from listening to your gut about whether I should participate in something and invite somebody or accept an invitation or not. Do I trust my gut to be able to know the right answer? um, Overcoming so many fears about making the mistake or taking the wrong invitation or not taking it or writing that or posting it or not doing it, all of those things about whether I can listen to my gut and whether I can overcome those fears, the fears of failing, the fears of making a mistake, the fears of it going well. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like at every step are opportunities for tapping, right?
And
And
I want to take a step back where you're talking about this sense of like choosing to create boundaries. And
mhm,
I think one of the things the subconscious mind is really good at is turning everything into all or nothing propositions. Because the subconscious mind doesn't do nuance. It just wants it to make it easy because nuance costs energy. And so I am Caesar, it's a thumbs up or it's a thumbs down. And I love the fact that just at the first level as we're thinking about this is, you know, because so much of like putting myself out there is where do I go? And it's like, oh, I got to put myself out in these places. But like thinking protectively, and I don't mean that harshly, but
right,
protectively going, what are the boundaries that I'm setting up, which are the venues, the topics, the places that I feel comfortable now,
mhm,
and
right,
recognizing the fact that it's not like I am building a stone wall that is going to exist for the next 2,000 years at this particular boundary. And so, what, like, yes, listening to our gut. So, like, what does that look like as we're
yeah.
trying to figure out where my place is in the world and sharing my stuff right now in terms of safety and effectiveness and all of that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot there. So when I start to look at boundaries, I mean, it can be everything as a practitioner. Do I say yes to this client that feels a stretch beyond my skill set or my practice level?
Mm,
Right?
yep.
Maybe something like I get torn. I want to help them. They're
Right.
asking for my help. I have this, name an EFT practitioner that doesn't want to help other people, right? I mean, you can't
Right.
find that because that's why we're all here. And yet somebody asks something to me and I'm squirming going, ooh, I don't know if that should be me to help, but they need help. So I'm going to now not listen to my gut that says maybe not. And I'm going to say yes, only to hit something that falls apart or doesn't go awry later. So that
Right.
ability to know that no is a complete sentence, that no, I'm not always the best person to serve a particular client. I can
Yeah.
help them to find other help. So the ability to say no's, I think most of us learn by saying yes and then realizing I never should have said yes. And here it
Yeah.
all fell apart and got messy and I should have said no. I don't know that there's a way to learn that except by getting messy and making that mistake enough times and being willing to learn how to say no. But maybe we didn't learn how to set boundaries in our life and with our families and as
Yeah.
and as kids, right? And then what are they going to think about me if I say no?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, of course, all the judgments of they're going to think I'm either not good enough or skillful enough, or they're going to judge me or think, all the things that I'm going to make up in my head that they're going to think about me. And then they're going to tell just like you said, it's going to get bigger.
Yeah.
Then they're going to tell other people. And then I'm going to be really seen. And now my imposter syndrome is going to show up that I'm trying to be more than I am. And we just tend to escalate and globalize those fears that already existed before getting into our business, right?
Yeah. So there's two things I want to tease out of that I think are really, really valuable. So the first is, like you said, that, sometimes it's hard for us to learn unless we get in the circumstance where we find out we've stepped over a boundary.
Yeah, often.
That is only true if we recognize the fact that it's possible for us to step over a boundary.
Okay.
And so I think the first thing, like everything you're saying is absolutely true.
Mhm.
And what you're assuming there is a level of self-awareness, which I think is it's good for us to say that quiet part out loud. That just because I can doesn't mean I should, but that doesn't mean I'm going to learn that particular lesson.
Right.
And so you and I are absolutely on the same page. And like, we need to be aware, like I need to be aware that, it's possible for me to go too far so I can learn that lesson.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because sometimes in our passion, we just want to, hey, if somebody asks me, I'm going to help. Yeah. I'm there. Absolutely. I'm there, even though I haven't done a review with them, even though I'll tap with anybody, anytime, anywhere, because it's amazing. Yeah. And I love the enthusiasm, and that's not necessarily the safest way to practice. And we know that.
I've come to the point in my life that I think that every moment of my life, if I think back to 10 years younger than that particular moment in my life, I'm going to think, gosh, what an arrogant know-it-all jerk. What did you think you were doing? And as I sit here now, judging my 40-year-old self, when I'm 60, I'm going to be looking at this version of Gene who thinks he's so enlightened, going, God, what a know-it-all jerk. And just being open to that change and transformation inside of all of that. Yep. The second thing that I want... Yeah, go ahead.
Please. No, you go.
Well, the second thing that I wanted to pull out of what you were just sharing there, before we went off on this tangent about that, is almost all of the things that you were talking about, like as you were framing the struggle of the practitioner, was you were framing it in terms of what they are thinking. Okay. And I think that's such a valuable entry point for us to figure out the things that we are struggling with, is to start with, okay, if I do this, what do I imagine someone else is going to be thinking?
Exactly. May as well work through that and think through that at the beginning, because it's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest thing over the years, I've written articles and taught, and the things that, the one idea that always gets the most feedback is this fear of putting yourself out there, in all its different forms, right? The fear that I will be, what does that mean? The fear that I'll be seen. Okay, what does that mean? Oh, that people will judge me. Judge me for what? That I don't know enough, that I'm not smart enough, that I'm not experienced enough, that I don't look whatever way enough, that I don't sound right enough. Who am I to be seen as the expert? What am and so all those fears kind of get lumped into, if I put myself out, because until we have a place where we have businesses that hire a lot of EFT practitioners and they don't have to do the self-promotion, 98% of the time we're having to be the ones promoting ourselves here. Yep. Which of course brings up all the opportunity to be okay with that. I'm putting myself out there as I am, with the amount of experience I have and all of that. But especially for newer practitioners, like, they can't claim to have 10 years of experience because they don't.
Right. Yeah.
And we don't want to be inauthentic and we don't want to lie, but it's also easier to find the lack of our own competence than I still know more than the average person, and I trust that I'm going to be able to help them to the extent that I can. And yes, other people know more than me, and yes, I'll have more experience in 10 years, but I still have an awful lot to offer right now. So again, these challenges of putting ourselves out there are just like, we're looking for the tail enders. We're looking for if I put myself out there, great, let's run through this. What's going to happen? Somebody will criticize me on social media and they'll make a public shaming comment, and that's going to bring up all my past history of being shamed for not being whatever enough, right? These are the opportunities for to go into practice and not have a regular tapping practice, whether it's a swap partner or practitioner or your own practice. Is just say no to that. That's just crazy.
My single favorite question when I'm having a conversation with someone and we're trying to decide if it is a good fit is a potential client of mine ask me the question, do you work with a practitioner? Mm-hmm. And just them recognizing that, like, it's like it being able to navigate it in that particular way. So as we look at that sense of, and it's interesting. We look at that sense of judgment, all of those things that you were saying, like, well, I'm going to be judged, I'm going to be criticized, all of that sort of stuff. As I hear
Right.
that, and I was just in my mind imagining my friend Craig is saying this. I know that you're not in those places right now. Like how easy and quickly it is for me to provide reframes for all of those things. Someone's going to say a negative comment. And if my
Okay.
friend had said that to me, these are the 3 or 4 things that I would start sharing back. Not that I'm telling what them to do, and
Okay.
how hard it is for me to do that for myself, and
Right.
being able to, because when it's being said about me, it's a judgment. When it's being said about my friend, I can see the context. I can see the big picture. I can see it, like I can see more of what's going on, not just the thing that is coming at me from the inside out.
Because the thing, when it's presenting, the thing ain't never the thing. In other words,
Right.
somebody thinking that somebody is going to criticize me because of whatever, because I called it this, or I look like this, and then a family member, like however I'm imagining it. And that's part of the tapping work that I will do with the
Yep.
beginning practitioners. Like, okay, you tell me what you're imagining is going to happen. Because so often, just as you said, it just becomes so global and so big and so overwhelming. I'll just be judged by who?
Right.
Okay. And when we can actually break it down into a smaller piece. Okay, I'm imagining somebody from my high school
Yeah.
that they're here and they're doing this, and I'm imagining them reading this and then writing that. And that becomes much more gentle in the tapping, because I can get to a specific example. We can get it down to
Yeah.
a piece of what that might actually look like. And just the act of breaking it into smaller pieces makes it more manageable often than
Yep.
like the whole world, like my mind is like the whole world's going to judge me.
Yeah.
Right. If I screw up, if I make a mistake on the interview with here, everybody in the world is going to, well, not everybody. Who?
Yeah.
Well, what if somebody, so the tappable to get specific is important.
Yeah. And what's interesting inside of that is we emotionally respond to the world the way we describe it.
Mm-hmm.
And if I am not being specific in my vocabulary, everybody's going to see this. And
Right.
even intellectually, I know everybody is not seeing this.
Right.
But if I say that out loud, emotionally, I'm going to start responding in that way.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to kind of demonstrate the way that we break some of that down, do a little tapping around that, and kind of putting ourselves out there? I will
Yeah.
I'll happily be guinea
Who,
pig.
who could we get at this short notice, Gene?
I know. We someone close by. I think he'll be helpful and willing.
Okay. All right. Now, I'm imagining the average person watching is like, yeah, sure, Gene. Like Mr. Put myself out there. Like, of
Yeah.
course, he can't have any fears or concerns in any way, shape, or form around this topic. We can go somewhere else. But I'll have you play along.
You don't have to play along.
I
We don't have to pretend, Craig. Like we can find that stuff as we do this.
was kidding. I was actually giving you room there. Okay, but let's go ahead. So I imagine that there's some way about either with the summit or with this tapathon,
Yep.
with this event, or any other way that some edge for you, that putting yourself out there brings up some degree of constriction or stress or worry or fear or whatever.
Yeah. So the edge for me is
Yeah.
outside of the transformational space. Inside of the transformational space, I have common vocabulary.
Right.
I live here in Brooklyn, New York. And so when I'm out in the world, I'm not talking to other transformational people. I'm talking to entrepreneurs. I'm talking to business owners. I'm talking to folks in the financial district. And so for me, that edge is once I start stepping outside of the common vocabulary.
Got it. Okay. So can you give me, I want you to just imagine some example of a stretch and an edge for you of either trying to promote something about yourself or your business that feels like, ooh, that's uncomfortable. Can you imagine some scenario, meeting with somebody or having some kind of collaboration or meeting or conversation?
Yeah.
You tell me.
So it's pitching myself to a very, very popular small business podcast who's not necessarily in the transformational space.
Got it. Okay. Okay. All right. And how would you pitch that? Is that something?
How would I pitch?
Is that a conversation? How are you going to pitch yourself?
So the 2 ways that show up is, one, I imagine myself being in the same space as them because I run in those circles here in New York, or 2, just reaching out to them directly, submitting an email, cold, whatever, saying, hey, I have something that I would love to share with your audience that I think is useful.
Great. Which one brings up more of a?
Doing it in person.
Okay. So What, you're at some kind of, what kind of
Meet and
event?
greet social setting here in New
You're
York.
at a
Yeah.
meet and greet, and are you going to talk to the person themselves?
Host of the show. Yep. Host of the show.
You're gonna go up in this conversation, in this meet and greet, and you're gonna go up to the host. You're gonna go up to the host of this podcast, and you're gonna introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Is that what you're imagining? You tell me.
That's what I would like to do. Absolutely.
Great. And just thinking about at that meet and greet, going up to the host of the podcast, introducing yourself, pitching yourself. What does that bring up for you right now? Just even imagining that.
I feel like someone's kid brother who is tagging along with the big kids.
Got it. And when you imagine that sense and that feeling and that energy of being like tagging along with the big brother, what kind of feeling does that bring up for you?
Small,
for one
I can just I can feel like there's energy here, and I just feel myself being smaller.
Okay. And what would you describe that area right here? I couldn't see totally.
Chest here. Yeah. So basically just right behind the sternum.
Okay, great. Okay. All right. Okay. If any of the words that I say don't resonate or I didn't hear you correctly, please feel free to correct me. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So just start with that. When you just start tuning into that small feeling 0 to 10, where do you put it in this moment? Just imagining the scene.
In this moment is 7.
Okay. All right. Even though I just have this small feeling.
I just have this small feeling.
I feel it in my chest behind my sternum.
And I can feel it in my chest behind my sternum.
Yeah. I'm just imagining being at a meet and greet and the podcast host is there.
And I just imagine myself being at the meet and greet and that host is there.
Mm-hmm. And I go up to them and I'm pitching myself for the show. Yeah.
And I go up and I pitch myself to be a guest on their show.
Yeah. And I just get this small feeling.
And I just get this small feeling.
Good. I accept that's what I'm feeling.
I accept that's what I'm feeling.
Good. And even though
I
just get this, like it's a small feeling in my chest.
I get this small feeling in my chest.
Imagining myself at this meet and greet going up to the podcast host.
Imagining myself at this meet and greet going up to this host.
Yeah. And it gives me a small feeling.
It gives me a small feeling.
I'm open to still accepting myself.
I'm open to still accepting myself.
Good. And even though I'm just imagining this meet and greet. Good. And I feel like a kid brother there. Mm-hmm. It makes me feel small.
I
feel it in my chest. Just walking up to that podcast host to introduce myself. That makes me feel small. I'm open to still accepting myself anyway.
All
right. Top of the head. It's a small feeling.
This small feeling.
Eyebrows. This small feeling in my chest.
This small feeling in my chest.
This feeling small in my chest feeling.
This feeling small in my chest.
Mm. Like being the kid brother. Mm-hmm. It's just a small feeling.
It's just a small feeling.
This feeling small feeling.
This feeling small feeling.
This feeling small feeling in my chest.
This feeling small feeling in my chest.
Yeah, like a kid brother feeling.
Like a kid brother feeling.
All right. So I like to take a pause and kind of tune in. So just imagining you're at this meet and greet in Brooklyn or whatever, and there's the podcast host that you really want to be on. And it is outside your typical transformational community, but you go up to them, introduce yourself, you're going to pitch yourself, and just like checking in on how that small feeling is doing right now or how it's changed or not.
So what it felt like as we were doing it, it was almost like not quite the Kool-Aid man busting through a wall, but there was a wall, and the sense that was pushing through the wall was a sense of usefulness, and not feeling arrogant and not feeling like I demand or deserve space, but feeling like, oh, I have something useful.
Okay.
So it's no longer like I feel like I'm tagging along. It feels like, oh, I have something to bring to the party in this particular setting. And maybe it's
Okay.
not an acceptance and it's not a speaking up yet, but it's just almost like in the room, I no longer feel like I have snuck in under a velvet rope.
Okay. And that's a useful starting place. And of course, if we were in session, we would continue to explore that. And if we continued in future sessions and working together, I highly doubt this is the initiation of feeling like the little kid brother in a situation. Right. And we would appropriately start to explore, why do you think that feeling showed up in the situation? You're a competent podcast host yourself. We have all these reasons that you shouldn't. I have these reasons, you might not, but you're going to then have the reasons for, well, that makes sense because ... And we would explore that together, of course.
Yeah. So, and the thing I love about that, like, I'll probably say this 87,000 times over the course of these 24 hours. But for me, one of the foundations for my transformation, like doing work, came from an idea from Milton Erickson, which is all transformation starts by stating what is. Okay. And for folks who are listening to what we just did, that's all you did in that tapping. You just simply stated what is. This is how I feel. This is where it's showing up in my body. This is how it feels. This is how it's showing up in my body. I acknowledge the fact that that exists. And I think that, like, as a practitioner, go ahead.
People underestimate the power. It's my experience, especially with newer practitioners, that we need to like throw everything at the client, and we need to throw in the positivity. We need to throw in the this and that. And it's like the power. Yeah, just so beautifully said, of stating what is and being okay with. I have many parts. I have parts that are excited about being on that show. I got parts of the thing I can make a huge difference. I can introduce, whatever. But then there's also another part that's like, feels like a little kid. Okay, I'm just going to own that. I'm just going to own that part. I'm just going to say, yeah, I do. And I'm okay with that. Maybe it'll go away. Maybe it won't. But you know what? It's part of who I am.
Yeah. And the beautiful part about that is we are experts in how we feel in this moment. And so like we already have the entry point into the thing. I don't have to have the reframe or the strategy or the new way to act or the anything else. I can just simply say, in this moment, I would like, and because I would like to do that, I feel that in my body. Like that's, it's like turning to a small kid. Use your words. Like we know how to just, if we give ourselves permission to simply describe what that experience is, the release is just so super powerful to make it so much easier to step into that.
Has that come to you? I'll kind of turn it back on you. Have you noticed, because we've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
Right? And have you noticed in your practice and working with people kind of a return? It's almost like kind of a homeopathic return to the single dose. In other words, when we start to look at not needing as much of the fancy dance, it's like we're using our clients' words. We're really just holding a place for the possibility of transformation and shifting for them. We're repeating back to them. I tend to find that I used to feel like I had to do more. I used to have fancier things and more tools. And over time, it actually becomes more straightforward and more simple and more direct and more powerful in its simplicity.
Yeah. And I think what that is a consequence of is, as a community, us letting go of the ideas of the 1 minute and 1 session miracle.
Yep.
Because if I think I need to get from here to there in a single step, it has to be super, super complicated for me to get from here to there in a single step. And the single biggest difference for me as a practitioner, if you looked at me versus 7 years ago, is the speed in which I work. Yeah. And the speed in which I work is so much slower because I am recognizing the value of incremental change. I actually did the math one day. So I'm sitting here in Brooklyn, New York. And if I sailed out of New York Harbor and I was on a straight line for London, England, not that I would get to London, but the edge of the coast that was in a straight line to London. And if I took the bow of my boat and I tipped it 1 degree, I would be 186 miles up the English coastline. By making a 1 degree change that while sitting in a boat going out of New York Harbor, it would not be noticed. And like to the point that I even have I have a little pre-flight checklist that I go over every single time I sit down. And number 2 on that pre-flight checklist is ask one more question. And so for me, it's recognizing that I need to slow myself down because the work is going to be deeper and more powerful, and it's okay. And so I think that's like, and maybe that's just my lived experience, but in teaching folks as well, like going back to your, like, we're simplifying things. I think part of the reason why we're simplifying things is we're having more reasonable expectations for ourselves in the process. And in doing that, we're changing our expectation of the outcome of a tapping round, but we're
Yep.
not changing our expectations of the impact of the transformation, because
Well,
those are different things.
but earlier in the practice, for people that are earlier in their practices, that I think it's a mix of, on one hand, are passionate and still wanting to help,
Yeah,
and mixed with the fear that they're not going to help.
that's right.
That
Yeah.
doesn't allow as much for that pacing of, you know what? We had a great first session. We developed safety, we developed rapport, we developed connection. We got them to have an experience of several positive tapping rounds. We were able to contextualize it. And that's a beautiful first session to build on, as
Yeah.
opposed to very early when it's like, okay, I'll do whatever you want. I'll follow you wherever you go. I'll do that. And it's out of the fear, often the fear of, I don't want to say something they don't want. I don't want them to get angry at me. I don't want them to be upset. I want them to have like a great session. And a lot of the fear like really holds us, where in the maturity over time is like, there's no race here.
And I think that that's a consequence of you and lots of other folks who are training practitioners, that folks who are helpers are more well formed as helpers. They're not more well formed in a tool set. Like, we're doing a good job of equipping people with a tool set, but
Right.
all of those things that you're talking about, being able to recognize the value of building rapport and moving along and all of that sort of stuff, what you're describing is someone who is a more mature practitioner or a more mature helper, which makes it easier for, like, it's easier for me not to be in a rush 16 years into working with clients, because I have enough reps under my belt to be able to go, okay, like that, we didn't get very far, but by the end of us working together, I just made a big deposit in the rapport bank, so
Right.
that next time when we do some work, we're going to be in a circumstance to do that. And I think that also dovetails into this conversation that we're having here about building our practice and feeling accepted, is that as I am more trusting of myself and being able to do this incrementally over time, I don't feel like I have to, like, okay, what we need to do is we need to, like, at the beginning of my practice, the beginning of this, like, I talked more people out of tapping than I did into it, because of my overgiddiness and my over enthusiasm, because, I was Paul who had the Damascus Road experience, that I want everybody else to have that particular thing inside of that.
Right.
And so I think I think it goes hand in hand. The more well-formed we are in trusting ourselves in the process, not that it's easy, but boy, does it become easier for us to be a sharer and to put ourselves out there of our work.
Yeah. And I want to bring it back almost to where we started, because when we're our practitioners, we're on business people, there's not like there's work and there's my personal life and development,
Right.
right? In other words, what you're saying so eloquently is, wow, as I'm learning this in my vocation, as I'm
Yeah.
learning to slow down in my practice and be more present and not rushing and not that bleeds into my home life, my personal life, my spiritual life, my who I
Yeah.
am. And I mean, I've been blessed to be basically self-employed my entire life almost. Um, and there's not that separation of, there's work life and there's who I am out there in
Yeah.
the 9 to 5 and who I am here. So the work that I do in my personal life shows up in my practice, but also
Yeah.
the challenges that I face. And because we know, in our practice, what is going to show up in our mirrors of self-reflection are going to be the challenges that we need to
Yeah.
overcome or to confront or to heal, etc. So it becomes this immersive life healing transformational journey, our work, our personal life, our spiritual life, our relational life, all of those things. Now, what that does is make it hard to often set boundaries and separate, because
Yeah.
on one hand, it's so immersive and there's really not much difference between how I'm being in practice, how I'm being at home,
Yep.
how I'm being, but that makes it often more challenging to say, okay, work is off right now. Our time
And-
is off right now. It's now personal time. That whole work-life balance is a real challenge for a lot of practitioners, because there's no nobody to tell you you're off the clock now, get out.
And so,
Right?
and because that's the case, ritualistically, there are a number of things that I do at the end of my day to help me to do that. You know,
Right.
I think of the old switchboard, and at the end of every single one of my client sessions, I literally just reach into the middle of my chest and I unplug the connection. And
Okay.
it's not a severing of the connection, and it's not that I'm getting rid of them. I've just ended the conversation, so the day is done. I live in this palatial 407 square feet here in Brooklyn, New York, and my office is 6 by 10 feet. But at the end of the day, tidy things up, close the door so that there is a physical boundary between here and the living space. I
Great.
go into the bathroom and I take warm water and I rinse my hands and I rinse my face. Part of rinsing my face is I have now just like, tapped all day and have just, have created the old North Star, constellations on my face. And I'm taking care of that. But like also recognizing the value of just going, okay, not that I'm letting go of all of this, but I need to be deliberate so I can do it in a healthy way. Because I think another way that we can get in our own way in growing our business is if we don't have thoughtful, deliberate boundaries. You were talking about earlier this fear of success. Well, if I am too successful, this is going to become so consuming of my
Yep.
life and of my experience. There's a part of me that's going to go, no, I don't want this to be my 24/7. And a really
Right.
easy way to make sure it's not my 24/7 is to make sure I don't have a successful business.
Bingo, secondary gain, bing, bang, boom, something else to tap.
Yeah.
There's so many tappable issues. That's why I say the beauty of this is if you want to grow and evolve, like do this, right? Because it
Yeah.
will continue to provide those opportunities for that. Or you let it overwhelm you, you shut down, you move on and do something else. But the opportunities are rampant. And it's like somebody needs to tell us that
Yeah.
and remind us, like, okay, if you're going into this work,
Yeah.
here's what you have to be open and willing and ready to face at various degrees of intensity, depending, you know.
I
So
was
yeah,
I was mentoring someone else in a different field of business that I work in, and he literally said to me, he goes, "But I don't want to take food off your table." And I'm like, "Dude, there is more than enough to eat for everybody out here." This is not an issue. There's not a scarcity of opportunity in that particular way, and it's like it's okay, because the other thing for me is like every single time there is someone who is doing thoughtful, deliberate, healthy, informed healing, it makes it more available for everybody else because I now have one more advocate in the world who's going, "You're never going to believe this weird tapping thing this guy did with me." And all of a sudden, they become an evangelist for this sort of transformation, being open in that particular way. And so, like, we're not going to run out of opportunity.
and aren't we also for our children and families really walking the talk of what it's like to live a life that's congruent? Like I
Yeah.
can't even imagine having a work personal life that's not congruent and
Yeah.
overlapping. It's hard for me to imagine that for myself and so I watch that in my family as well. And so I think we're setting that tone for next generation. That and I think we're seeing that in our Gen Zs and our, all of those that are
Yeah.
like, I'm not, post COVID, it's really even kind of even more. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm not willing to have this separation of life. I'm not
Yeah.
willing to just go do this job that doesn't matter and doesn't have some healing potential in it. So I think that as EFTers, we're really at the cutting edge of walking that talk.
And I think the last thing, just to kind of end on as we think about all of this, is that all of these, like the tappable issues that have come up that you've hinted at, or as people are listening, they're actually hearing the tail enders, is
Mhm.
it's not an all or nothing proposition.
Right.
It's a circumstance, like if I want to speak up more, maybe at first it just feels safe for me to speak up in my community. Then it might
Right.
feel comfortable for me to speak up on a stage. Then it might feel comfortable for me to speak up in a platform out in the world. And, like I'm in a unique experience that half a dozen times in my life, I have spoken, performed, or presented in front of more than 24,000 people in the audience at one time.
Beautiful.
But most people never have to face that particular thing to be successful. You don't have to become comfortable being inside of the MCI Center in Washington, D.C. that is full to be able to turn to the person who's next to you where you can do something like that, and recognizing that each time we knock down one of these tail enders, all of a sudden the beach is just a little bigger. The sea is receded just a little
It
bit.
is, and there's never not going to be the edge.
That's
I
right.
mean, I think I'm imagining people look to you and I with a certain level of comfort of doing this, and they imagine whatever they imagine. But I will never forget my edge. I was down at Mind Heart Connect, and my presentation was immediately following Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Yeah,
I was nauseous.
absolutely.
I was sweating and nauseous. I couldn't even watch the end of his presentation. I had to go tap with Alina in the bathroom because that was was just like, how could I ever match that level, right? And so, but before that, it was another level of being online. So we're all going to have whatever that edge is. And when you hit that edge, there'll be the next edge. And if you're open and you're willing and you're courageous enough, just know there's always going to be a next edge for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Craig, well, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being a champion for so many practitioners in the world. And like,
you.
it's just, I mean, again, you're modeling it for all of us. And I really, really appreciate it. And I appreciate your time and your thoughtfulness. It's always a delight when I get a chance to chat with you, fan. Thanks a lot.
Keep cool there in New York.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. If you found this interview inspiring, I would encourage you to support the Peaceful Heart Network by going to 24hoursoftapping.com/support or clicking the link in the description. And you will see on the screen right now a playlist to all of the interviews from this year's and last year's 24 Hours of Tapping. I hope you enjoyed those as well.